It is a distinct privilege for me to be here via video today as you, the leaders of the relay movement, plan and set the stage for the next phase and chapter of the relay movement. Here we are at Relay at 30. Boy, doesn't it have a nice ring to it? And maybe too, it's a great time to reflect on that rich relay history and recall some of the lessons learned along the way and remind ourselves of what built relay into what it is today. Now, believe it or not, there was a BR era in the ACS, that's before relay, and I was privileged to be a part of the American Cancer Society for nearly 40 years, half before relay, and the last part as a part of the relay nationwide staff team. And I can tell you the latter half was a lot more fun and enjoyable and productive. Now, in the early 1990s, the ACS was experiencing several years of stagnant fundraising, and the mainstay for fundraising and community involvement, the door-to-door crusade, was gone, and our core of volunteers was getting older, and we didn't have a good fundraising strategy to counter the likes of the March of Dimes, Walk America, the most successful event of that time. And what the ACS did have was market-leading recognition, great community respect, and a solid community base. And our tagline was the American Cancer Society, the people organization. Now, but the truth is, we didn't have an effective way to bring the people, to engage and involve and energize our core of volunteers, and to kind of reconnect and rekindle their involvement in that post-door-to-door era. We also didn't have an attractive venue or an activity to draw in new and younger volunteers. Well, as we know now, we already had the answer to our organizational dilemma. Gordy Klatt and Pat Flynn were already hard at work trying to convince everyone that relay was the thing to do. That was in the early 1990s, and it took a few years for relay to get some traction from that start back in 1985. And that story of the first relay is well documented, and everyone connected to the relay movement is certainly going to miss having our founder, Dr. Gordy Klatt, around, but what a legacy he has left for us to continue his dream and his vision. Now again, in the early 90s, Gordy and Pat were going to meetings and traveling around the country, encountering a lot of skeptics and a lot of doubters, and hey, at first glance, a 24-hour running event just didn't seem to have a general mass appeal needed to bring more people into the American Cancer Society. But the organization was desperate for a fix to that listless fundraising and loss of market share, and Gordy and Pat worked their collective magic, and in 1993, the National Board of Directors designated Relay for Life as the ACS's first ever national signature fundraising event. Believe it or not, it was only the 6th most productive special event that year, so clearly they did an amazing and great sales job. So what happened? Many of us started to try relay, and I was working in the Georgia division at the time, and as an example, the first year, 11 communities were willing to try relay, and they raised a collective $170,000, many with just 10 teams and 10 survivors. Now, those numbers aren't overwhelming, but something magical seemed to happen on those tracks. It was hard to explain. I was at the Hall County, Georgia relay, and it was a first-time event, and they just had gotten started, and a huge major thunderstorm blew through in the early evening. Figured everyone would go home. And something happened that never happened at a previous event like that, and all the participants came back. They reset their tents and started walking around the track again. And people at events spent all their time, or a great deal of their time, planning on how they were going to make it bigger the next year, how they could involve more people, more teams, attract more survivors. It was amazing. Okay, and so what happened that next year? Well, in Georgia, 87 communities raised over $1.4 million. I went to North Carolina, and Relay there brought in $1 million new in its first year. And similar results were taking place in other early adopter states like Alabama, Mississippi, Kentucky, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Tennessee, Iowa, and Virginia, the early adopters. We had mayors of communities thanking us for bringing Relay to their town, saying it brought the community together better than anything else, and it brought out the best in their community. In fact, we started getting calls from mayors saying, hey, we'd love to have a relay in our town. Well, of course, there are a few communities where the old guard volunteers were voting not to hold a relay, citing the lack of interest, at least in their minds, or that the folks in their community just don't camp out. But it didn't take long to find others in the communities who are more than willing and excited about introducing relay in their community. The formula for success quickly emerged. Find passionate, enthusiastic, organized leaders, develop a solid organization, communicate, and focus on bringing the people, the teams, and the survivors, and build and offer a real celebration in the community and not just hold an event. Oh, and make it fun, unique, and entertaining and meaningful, and that's how it worked. And we loved reading those early articles and the early letters to the editor that people wrote. And I saved a lot of them, and I found a few that I thought I'd just share with you. Here, a reporter wrote that Relay for Life is more than just a fundraising event. It's an opportunity to bring the community together in fellowship and fun. And she went on to say that team members went the 6/10 of a mile around a lake, pushing baby strollers, shouldering children, walking with a cane, walking hand in hand, or deep in conversation, often about their experiences with the disease. She wrote that Relay for Life is a huge, compassionate support group fueled by dedicated persons who either have had cancer or have coped with afflicted family members. Hope is the mainstay, and grand organization is the big reason for its success. Then there was a letter to the editor from a survivor. I've always remembered this one. Anyone who has experienced cancer in some shape or form can tell you what a thief and robber it is. It can take away your dignity, your femininity, your masculinity, your peace of mind, your long-term plans. Well, Friday night, that all changed. It came together at 7 p.m. when the names of the survivors had begun to be called out, and we took our first steps. 75 people, as different as night and day, as black and white, as up and down, from all walks of life, socially, economically, but with a common bond. We had fought cancer in some shape and form and won. We were no longer losers, but winners. No longer the face on the crowd, but a quiet voice that spoke louder and louder with each step. No longer the victim, but the survivor. So clearly, the transition of Relay from just an event to a community celebration was underway, and two was the importance of community pride and recognition for the success and viability of Relay. And we learned, as we saw in a recent Relayer's shirt at the recent Tacoma Relay, that volunteers just don't do the work, they make it work, which led to a focus on volunteer leadership development. And there was a corresponding transition for the American Cancer Society community staff supporting Relay as well. They were no longer focused as event managers, but as community organizers and talent scouts and relationship managers. Now, the continuing success of Relay captured more interest. Income went from $2 million from 100 relays in 1992 to $20 million in income in 850 communities just 3 years later. And it was after that year's relays that a proposal from several division staff leaders was presented to Dr. Sefrin, advocating for a dedicated nationwide Relay staff leadership team and a volunteer advisory team to develop and expand the Relay program. Well, he approved that proposal and has been a strong advocate for Relay ever since. Now, by 1997, Relay was raising more than $60 million and passed March to Dimes Walk America as the largest special event in the country. And that was the year, too, that our founder, Dr. Gordy Klatt, challenged Relayers that he thought we should be able to reach $100 million by the year 2000. Well, it sounded like another one of his bold predictions and a great challenge at the time, but truth is, by year 2000, there were more than 2,700 communities holding a Relay, and the income was $169 million. So in 2003, Relay income was at $265 million, and we were at a community relay in Springfield, Missouri, celebrating the first $1 billion raised through Relay, with more than 2 million people participating in some way on 3,800 tracks across the country. So truly a Relay movement was underway. Now remember, just a decade earlier, there were a lot of questions and concerns about how we were going to rebuild our volunteer base, enhance our community presence, and find new community leaders and attract new and younger volunteers. Well, you are all the latest examples of how well Relay provided the answers to that dilemma. You are the latest in a long line of talented leaders who are contributing to the original dream and vision of one man. In his memory, the Relay movement marches on. My name is Reuel Johnson. I began relaying in 1992 and had the honor of leading the nationwide business unit from 1996 to 2013. I'm a proud member of the Relay Hall of Fame and equally proud to say that the American Cancer Society Relay for Life is 30 years strong.